Welcome to Between Sundays, our Rainbow Forest podcast where we hope to encourage, inspire, and help you along the way in walking your faith, living it out day by day. I'm Martha. I'm on staff here at Rainbow Forest and a longtime member. And I'm so blessed today to be here with Heidi Grooms. Thanks for joining us, Heidi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I've known you for a long time, but many of our listeners may not know who you are. So I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Okay. I'm the wife of Jonathan Grooms, and we have 8 kids. We have spent the last 10 so years really involved most of the year in Jordan, and the last couple years maybe just in the winters in Jordan. I started actually coming to Rainbow at the age of 14. This is where I gave my heart to the Lord at 11 and really felt a missions call at 12. And then at Rainbow is where it flourished. It was the old the Church Alive is Worth the Drive campaign, I think, that Rick Vai did. And then when I turned 18, I went to go work in a ministry in Texas and go to college there. And I was there for at least maybe 6 years. And in that time, Pastor Mike came on board. And in that time, also, my husband became missions pastor. And so he served as missions pastor for a long time. And he became my missions pastor because I was sent out by Rainbow to this ministry to work in Texas and throughout the world. And anyway, to make the story short, that's how Jonathan and I met as I came in to raise support for a project in another state or another country. And instead, I don't know, I just raised support for life, I guess. I got married, and we met each other. We both have a passion for missions, and it just kind of, we saw how God was bringing that together. And anyway, so we have raised our kids here as well and served in singles ministry, youth ministry, every ministry. I think at some point in time we've been involved in children's ministry, mission station, trips abroad, and I don't know, everything we've been involved in. Recently, we have spent a lot of time working on something called the Go Center. It's about, I don't know, several miles down the road, and it's a center where we hope to mobilize and encourage Christians all over the Roanoke Valley to have a heart for God's heart for showing and sharing His love with the world, and just to kind of ignite that fire in them to for the Great Commission and to see His name glorified.
And it is an incredible work God has done there at the Go Center. I'm just amazed and know it was truly Him, and you're all seeking His face. And just on another note, I'm so thankful Pastor Mike came and brought his son.
Yes, I am too.
I love that story. I love your all's story and how God has written that, and just how you are walking in obedience to Him. We're so thankful. But I'm glad you're here today because as Pastor John is preaching through the book of Malachi and about whether our worship matters, I think you'll be instrumental today in kind of telling that story God has written on your hearts and called you to. Because when I think of worship, so many things come to mind, so many people come to mind, but you are one of those. Just even as a young woman many years ago, unmarried, and then becoming a wife, becoming a mother, and very much a missionary, I think of you as someone who lets worship permeate their life. And I think that is so important for all of us. But that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I'd love to know more about worship from that perspective as a wife, as a mother, as a missionary. How does it permeate your life? What does it look like day to day?
When I think about worship, I always think of one of my favorite verses in the scripture is Psalms 27:8, where God is saying, "Come and talk with me." And then the response, it says, and then I respond, "Lord, I am coming." And I just love that verse because that's what basically He's saying. He wants a relationship with us. He wants to spend time with us. And worship is that response of saying, I'm coming. I'm spending time with you. I am talking with you. I'm going to be in your presence. And also another one of my favorite verses is Psalms 16:11, where basically in your presence there is fullness of joy. And so when we're with him and we're living our life with him in his presence, there is a joy that we can find even in the hardest of circumstances. And I've seen it. I've been through grief of all kinds. I've been through some challenging situations, but with him, there's joy even in that because of his presence. And that's the way I want to live my life. And that's the way I think he wants us to have is his presence. And that's why he made himself available to us, is so that we can walk in his presence. When I think of like kind of where it began for me as a young person, I got great discipleship here at Rainbow when I was young, and there's so many good courses we took. Experiencing God, I highly recommend everybody to do that. But when I was young, I took a lot of different Bible studies, and they really helped me understand that daily habits are important. I think everybody's heard that saying, like, if you want to change your life, change your habits. And the daily habit of having time alone with him is so critical, of setting aside time for that. And when I was single and young, it was so easy because, man, I just wake up with Jesus every morning and I have an hour, 2 hours, whatever I want to do, spend with the Lord. I would go on dates with Jesus, just go up to the parkway and spend time alone with him. Or when I was in Texas.
But let me guess, with 8 children, that's kind of changed.
It has. So when I got married, I remember that first month I was like in shock. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm waking up with Jonathan and going to bed with Jonathan, and I'm like, where's my Jesus? And so I had to learn even in that, like that distracted devotion, still fighting for some time alone with the Lord. And then, of course, 8 kids, like every kid came, and in that season of even just having little ones and really learning to fight for the time alone with him, and that habit of having just time to not just talk to him and study the word and tell him how wonderful he is, because he loves that and that's what he wants to hear from us, but also just listening to him. And listening to him and just being quiet sometimes in his presence. And sometimes it does take a walk away from everything. And sometimes that's how I have to fight for it now because of the chaos of our home. If you've ever been in our home, it's like noise constantly. But it just taking that moment just to walk away and find a secret place just to be alone with him and talk and listen to him. And then also sometimes it's not like you're going to get that time alone with him. So it goes back into that verse of in my presence there's fullness of joy. So that your life is like meant to be a constant conversation with God. And so a lot of times conversation is happening as we're driving down the road, as we're washing the dishes, as we're, taking the kids to the next thing, just speaking with the Lord and listening to the Lord and seeing him in what he's doing. And like, he will show me and reveal himself to me, even through my kids and through different circumstances and ways that, because I'm listening and I'm attentive and want to be with him, that I'm going to see, I always think it looks funny sometimes, this seeking the Lord with constantly. Sometimes like I was Mary and Martha, she was at his feet. It looked, so to the people around her, it looked like she was being selfish. She should be helping Martha over there at the cleaning the whatever. And that's the way Martha felt. Sometimes it looks selfish to spend that time alone with the Lord. Or sometimes it looks unwise. Like, okay, Jesus is about to do this great thing. He should get a full night's sleep, but instead he's up all night praying and being with the Father. And then, or sometimes it looks downright foolish, like David, who just gets overwhelmed with God. He's dancing in the streets in his underwear, worshiping the Lord. And I think that all of those things, that still it's worth it, even if I look foolish or selfish, that spending that time alone with him is the only way I can survive, because I'm a very thoughtful person. I need him every moment of the day. I can't even doing this podcast, I'm like, I'm going to mess something up, because the way my mouth is always in my way. And, I don't know, I can be very fleshy sometimes. And so I really want to be living in his presence and having that constant conversation with him, so that the Spirit he can shine and he can show his love to other people through me. And
I
anyway.
love that. It's really countercultural, and I'm shaking my head not because I think you're a fleshly, unwise person,
Yes,
but because I'm like, yes, that's me, and I'm probably all of the listeners are thinking, yes, that's me. And in fact, I heard Pastor John say in a sermon that we should really look different than the world. We've got this mentality, especially as Americans, work, 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 work. Fill every minute, every second, be productive, produce. And God calls us to something different. And that's so difficult, I think, to get past for us. And I love that perspective and that reminder that we need to be listening to God. And it can look maybe countercultural or counterproductive or even foolish sometimes, but that's God's wisdom looks like foolishness to the world. So
recently I read in a book somewhere, they were talking about Jesus never played, to our knowledge, a musical instrument. And I think you were talking about it before the podcast, just how a lot of times we think of worship as just singing to him, but Jesus worshiped and glorified God as an example for us of how to do that. And he never had to pick up an instrument, which I have no talent with. I know Martha does. We all know Martha does, but I have no musical talent with my voice or with my instruments, but I can worship the Lord in so many other ways.
Yes, worship is not just music. I'm so thankful God created music, and we are called to worship musically, and that's one way we can worship him, and corporately, that's so beautiful. But yes, we were talking, and I said when I was praying about this podcast and worship, and God laid on my heart Nehemiah and how Ezra stood up and read from the law, and the people worshiped. They wept and they raised their hands and they praised the Lord by hearing the word. So yes, filling our lives with worship music is good, but we need to fill it with the word. We need to fill it with quietness to listen to God. And speaking more about that, how did you develop that discipline to listen to the Lord? I think that would be a question listeners might have.
I think it's that whole habit thing, like making time for him. And like I said, moms know this, especially with young kids, and you're really having to fight for that time alone with him. I think when the more time, though, you have in the Word, and the more you spend time with him, the more you want to. It's like you get a taste of what it is to walk with God. And on this earth, it's not going to be like heaven. It's not exactly, but he gave us his presence so that we don't have to be alone. And even when he gave us the Great Commission, he said, "Lo, I am with you always." Like he's with us, That's the coolest part of that, is like, yeah, we are going to go to this foreign country. We're going to go live in a place that's hard and whatever, but he's with us. So what does it matter where we go? Like as long as we have him with us. And I think that's a key thing. I think some things that I've done with my kids over the years to help them understand what it means to walk with the Lord is we do Bible and breakfast every morning. It's basically we just open up the Bible and that's how we have breakfast. It's just reading through the scriptures, and then we celebrate him really well. So like we take I know holiday is different for everybody, but we really just celebrate him all out. On Christmas, we have this massive party in the morning, just worship to him. Every kid brings a gift to Jesus. It's a really sweet time and of just thinking about him and his goodness. And we all 25 days still, or 24 days till Christmas, we're thinking about who he is and what he's done and why he came. And then the same thing with Easter. We have 24 days till Easter, and we celebrate him and thinking about why, just going through scriptures and reading, why in the world did he do this for us? The love of God and understanding the sacrifice that God for this relationship with us so that we can live in his presence. And then we also, we read biographies, like missionary biographies of other people who have walked with him. And so one thing you'll find out, like from every biography or any book you ever read or anybody you know of that has been walking with the Lord, that time alone with him, with God, is sacred. Like they have that, and it's just out of the overflow that they are continuing to walk with the Lord, because that their main priority is to seek him first and to make him, like that's my life verse is Philippians 1:21, to live is Christ and to die is gain. So really to live is Christ, and to make him number one in eternity, and fix our eyes on him and his plan.
That's awesome. I also know you do another interesting celebration outside of the typical Christmas and Easter. I don't mean to say typical, because those are not typical. We should celebrate big at those holidays, as you said, for what Christ has done for us and who he is. But I'm always fascinated by your Feast of Tabernacles celebration. Would you like to tell our listeners a little more about that?
A long time ago, I was pregnant with my first, and we were going to Bible study. Carson Kistner does awesome Bible studies. I've loved doing them with her over the years. But right when she was going through all the feasts, and she was like, and we were just studying about each one of them, and then she kind of challenged us. She said, well, just pick one and make that your new family tradition, or something to that effect. But it stuck with me so deeply, and I saw that happy feast where basically people took a whole week aside just to thank God for all the miracles he had done, all his wonderful deeds throughout the year. And it was such a really cool time, and people have done that for like 3,000 years. And so I started studying more and more about the feasts and their traditions of the symbolism of even Christ. They pour the water into from the pool of Shalom into the Mediterranean Sea, but how Christ has come to all nations, like he's been poured out for all nations. There's so much picture of the whole feast. So that's something we do every year. We set aside a whole week. We write down all the wonderful things we can think of, and just put them up on banners all around wherever we're staying. And then we take the time to really worship him and do a bunch of different of the ceremonies, but also ways to remember who he is and his character. And it's always, we come back refreshing. So sometimes you go on a vacation and you come back worn out because you went and did a bunch of activities or whatever, but never have we come back worn out from Feast of Tabernacles. Like our hearts are refreshed. Maybe physically it's a long drive or whatever, but our hearts are so refreshed because of just focusing on him and his wonderful deeds. And that's the biggest prayer I have for my kids, is that they walk with the Lord, that they know him and they walk with him. It's going to look different for every person because we are so unique. And that's why there's something I speak to my kids all the time. I look at them and I'll say, there's never been anyone in history like you, there's no one today like you, and there's never been anyone in history like you, that you've been made to sing a song of worship that only you can sing to him. Like God created you for this unique purpose, to worship him in this unique way. And then that's my biggest prayer, is I pray that you do that with all your might, all your life, so the whole world can see how wonderful he is. And I just hold their little face and say these things and pray this prayer over them, because I know we are all created and it's going to look like different. So Martha will get her violin out and she will be playing wonderfully for the Lord. And honestly, I don't know what I do, but I chatter before the Lord and worship him with whatever. And it's like everybody's looks different, but
put together, it's a beautiful tapestry of worship, especially when you think about each of us individually and the way God's gifted us, and then he calls us together,
and it brings such joy to him. And that's John Piper always says that missions exist because worship doesn't, which means like somewhere around the world somebody's not worshiping the Lord, which is what they were created to be doing. And that's why we have to go and show them who he is and share with his love with them, because we're created for worship. And so when we are worshiping or spending time in his word reading, because that's what it is, or walking and talking with him and praying and all these things, it brings like this contagious joy and happiness that you're not going to find in anything else. It's like, that's what, and it brings him glory. And that's what we're created to do. We're doing what we're created to do.
That is so encouraging and inspiring. I want to take a whole week off and just go celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, even though it's not probably the season or time for that. But you've given us so many inspirational ideas and so many practical ideas today about worship. Are there any final words of encouragement you would give to our listeners who might be seeking out what worship looks like and how they can implement it practically
Yeah.
into their daily lives.
I think that first, making that daily habit. And sometimes you have habits in your life that you need to change that are taking that time away from Him, which is, of course, I don't know where my phone is, but the phone, that's the biggest one right now. Whatever it is that's taking you away from that presence, just really set it at the altar and go and spend time with Him. One of the big things I did that I don't do very much now that I have so many kids, but I would go at least once a year and just spend a weekend away with just Jesus and I and the Word of God anyway. And it was really good and a blessing to me. So I encourage you to do things like that.
Heidi, thank you so much. What a blessing you are to so many, including me. And I just really appreciate you taking time today to encourage me and our listeners. God bless you.
Thank you for having me.